I have a few more wrist exercises and more pointers from the handstand entrances so that you have more to practice. And the first thing I wanted to give you was a wrist extension strengthening exercise, which is very simple. And again, wrist extension is this, where you bend your hand backwards and your palm is facing up, or when you're on the floor, obviously down. And this is what you are doing in handstand. If you type a lot or you're driving and you don't extend your wrists that much, then this might be worth doing so that you can strengthen the movement for things like handstand. Let me turn the camera down so I can show you the version of this on the floor. So the exercise is very simple. You just come into hands and knees or all fours, and you have your wrists in extension already, and your fingers are really spread apart. The exercise is lifting one hand off of the floor, just like an inch or so, keeping that amount of extension, and then you lower it back down. And then you lift the other hand off the floor, keeping that amount of wrist extension, and then lower it down. And that's it. You go back and forth. So I'm strengthening my wrist extensors, and down. You can also do this at a wall. So you could come up to the wall and put your hands flat onto it. In line with your shoulders is fine, or a little bit higher if this much wrist extension bothers you. And same thing that you did on the floor. You have your hands spread open, and then you lift one palm away from the wall, set it back down, and then the other. And then you press it back down. So you keep your arms straight, lifting up, and I'm pushing into the wall with this hand at the same time. So my shoulders are doing slightly different things, but I'm focusing on keeping this and not letting the wrist go backwards towards the wall, or forwards towards the wall, I should say. And then that's it, and then do the other side. Maybe do this 4 times, lifting away and then coming back to the wall 4 times for both wrists. And then after you do the wrist extension exercises, you can move your wrists more fluidly to break up any tension that caused. So you could take your hands, make gentle fists, right? And roll your wrists. Just make circles. And then switch the direction. A couple circles. Another exercise you could do to move your wrist and your hand through more ranges of motion is to start out maybe the hand like this, or you could make a gentle fist, and then you can bend your wrist down into flexion, so stretching the top here, and then you can lift the hand up into extension. You could open the hand and stretch through your fingers, and then you can relax your hand, and you can move the thumb towards the inside and then the pinky towards the outside. And then you could do a circle one way and then circle the other way. So again, flex, extend, level, thumb in, thumb out, circle, circle. And you can, to increase the challenge or also build strength by doing this, you can add a weight. I would recommend a 1 pound dumbbell or even less if they make those. What I have here at the studio is a 1 pound like squishy ball weight. Let me show you. And you can do most of those movements just holding on to your dumbbell, or in my case, this weighted ball. So you could move through flexion, bending your fingers down, extension, level, turn your thumb in, turn the pinky out, circle, very slow, circle. And you don't have to lift your arm up, I'm just lifting it up to show you. You could do this with your hand down towards the floor, and then you could shake it out afterwards. So those are 2 more groups of exercises that you can try to give your wrists some more movement and some more strength. Okay, I thought of another helpful tip for the hopping entrance or the hopping drill into handstand, the one-legged hop. I thought of this because I was in a class where handstand was being taught in this way with this one-legged hop, and I was watching people because I was kind of tired, so I was sitting and watching what people were doing. You will have more successful hops, more successful trials, and probably catch more air if you can get more weight into your arms and your hands than in your legs before you jump up. Obviously, this is going to be easier to do if you have more flexible hamstrings and a more flexible lower back, because you can walk yourself closer and it's easier to tip more weight into your arms. When your body's more spread apart, you kind of have to put more weight in your legs, which I'll show you in a second. But no matter what, if we can get more of our weight forward before we jump up, then our legs are going to feel lighter. When you hop up, you won't have to jump as hard, your legs will feel lighter, and your shoulders will already be loaded and more engaged and ready to catch you. So let me go back there and try to show you what I mean. So here's one way that our L hop might look. We're gonna walk up a little bit as much as we can. If we have tighter hamstrings, then the leg might have to stay kind of further back, and we lift the other leg. So in this position, what I'm feeling is a lot of weight, a little more than half is in my leg back here, and there's a little under half in my hands. And so I'm gonna have to kick a little bit harder from this position because there's more weight back in my legs. It's still possible to do, you just have to kick harder, which makes it more likely that you're gonna overshoot. Whereas if I can walk up closer, even with bent legs, if I can walk up closer to my hands, right away as I walk up, I can feel that I'm able to lean forward and get more weight into my arms. Back here, it's not as easy to do that. So I'm more squished up, closer to my hands, I can lean forward, more weight into my arms. So now I have probably half or a little more than half of my weight in my arms. And then I can lift my leg up. Let's do it exactly the same way. And I won't have to jump as hard because I don't have as much weight to get off the floor. Does that make sense? I can take a tinier hop and my legs feel a lot lighter, so it's easier for me to catch myself. So again, I hope that makes sense. You can do it with straight legs too, if you have that flexibility. So you could walk up as close as you could, get this leg up as high as you can. This leg can be more straight, but you're gonna have to bend it somewhat, obviously, because you're jumping. And you lean forward, okay, before you jump up. You lean and then jump. Instead of, I was seeing this in the class I was taking. I was seeing people jump up like this or like this. And the reason that people kick around a lot like that or kind of flail around is because there's more weight backwards in the legs. And so you kick and you come up, but then the weight just plops you right back down. So you're gonna get more out of your hops if you can get more of the weight first forward, leaning into your arms. With the one-legged hops into handstand or your handstand attempts, you don't have to have flexible hamstrings. Bend your legs as much as you need to, and you don't have to lift that leg that's in the air very high. But what is really helpful is just getting more weight forward into your arms. If you're really tight or your hamstrings are just kind of a long way from opening, then you can make this easier by lifting your kicking leg, the one that's really bent, up on something. Maybe a stool or a chair, like a sturdy chair, not one with wheels. I have a headstand table here, and we're gonna pretend that that's a stool because it looks like a stool. I will use it and show you what I mean, so that if this is really difficult or hard for your hamstrings, this is something you could try to make it easier. So this is a headstand table. We're not using it for headstand though. First of all, let me show you, if you're not very flexible in the backs of your legs or your lower back, getting up really close like this to practice your jumps is probably not gonna happen. It's gonna feel really hard and your leg is gonna be fighting you a lot. So it is okay to be in like a really short downward facing dog rather than be more in a standing forward fold like this. So if this is what you can do, being here and not up here, that's fine. Just start where you are. Lift this leg, whichever one's gonna be straight, up as high as you can. And then since you're farther away from your hands, it's harder to get more of the weight into them. So you're gonna have to jump harder. That's just what this is gonna mean for you right now. Because ideally we'd be closer and I can lean more of my weight into my arms ahead of time. But back here, I just have to kick harder. What you could do is come into a standing forward fold and really bend your floor leg. Be here, like a little closer, really keep this leg bent a lot. And then you can practice with jumping with less force. And or you could use a chair or a stool. Bring your stool on your mat so that it is stable. And again, no wheels, it has to have solid feet. You would put the kicking leg up on the stool. So you'd come to a wall, obviously, facing it. And one leg is gonna go up and be straight, like your leading leg, and then the other's gonna kick. So I'm gonna put the leg that's gonna kick up on the stool, and I can lift my other leg up. So it's exactly the same shape, I'm just up higher, and what this allows you to feel is more weight into your arms ahead of time. You can really lean forward easily, and you can just take tiny, tiny little hops, really small, so that you get the chance to feel that. So this is something that everyone can do if your hamstrings are flexible or not, but if you are tighter in the back of your body, then this is a valuable way to try it another way so that you don't have to kick so hard all the time. It is possible to do handstands with back bends in them and to let your back arch, and it's possible to do handstands without your legs straight up, like the half handstand. And what that tells you is that to stay stable on your hands, you don't necessarily need to have your core involved very much. Like in back bends, your core is being stretched. And in the half handstand, your legs don't really have to be that strong, and neither does your core very much. Like in the tuck jump, everything is really squished up. Of course, your core is gonna be turned on to stabilize your upper back and your rib cage, but not as much as your shoulders need to be involved. So these next steps are really focusing on the shoulders and feeling the catch. I want to talk about a few ways I think about finding that catch, so that hovering in the middle. And one of those ways is a mental way. Like I think about the energy moving in a certain shape. Let me get that ball again. Pretend this is your hips, right? We're jumping up and we're sending the weight of the hips backwards towards the wall. And if you are overshooting, you're gonna hit the wall a lot, right? And you have this arc of energy, of movement. What I like to think about in my mind is that I'm sending this weight up, but then I want it to drop down into my shoulders and my hands so I don't hit the wall, or if the wall's not there someday, so I don't topple backwards. I wanna think about, instead of an arc, I want to think of the weight going up and then plateauing and going down, kind of like a basketball into a hoop. So I'm jumping the weight of my hips up, and then I want the weight to go down into the hoop of my shoulders and then down into my hands. How to find that catch, like physically, how do you do that? What I find really helpful for finding the catch is using my hands. In order to slow your hips down so that they don't hit the wall when you jump up, there needs to be a counterbalancing force. So you need to be doing something somewhere in your body that slows that movement down. And I find that the hands are very useful for this. When I'm jumping up into handstand, if that's gonna be the way I get into it, whether it's a one-legged hop or both legs at the same time. When I do that, once my hips make it over my head or even slightly behind, I push back into the floor with my hands, and specifically I push back into them with my fingertips. It seems counterintuitive because if I pushed hard enough, I'm just gonna counter my jump, like it's gonna cancel it out somewhat, but we want that. It's not like you can see when your hips are over your head, it's just a feeling thing and a trial and error thing, but I wanna show you a couple of my attempts again, and I want to put the camera on my hands so you can see, because every time I jump up and hold and find that catch, my hands are really working. I'm going to do a few more of those tuck jumps, and I want you to watch my hands. Oops, so caught myself for a second and now I'm down again. Didn't quite make it that time. There we go. So my fingers grip whenever my hips want to go too far back. Then they relax when they find that balance point. My fingers are pressing into the mat and kind of doing that gentle little spider motion. Not this, but there's a gripping, and I'm actually pressing. That's helping me press away, like this way, into the mat to slow my hips down. Both of those things I find help me find the catch. Thinking about my hands, slowing my jump down, and that basketball in the hoop idea. Because we think about when we're first starting, I just need to kick to get my legs off the floor, but we need to think about stopping the weight and moving it down into our shoulders. And we'll do some drills today that strengthen your shoulders and your hip awareness as well, so that that all happens easier for you. Today, I wanted to talk about this is like the next steps, right? So you would progress into these exercises once you are fairly comfortable with jumping up at the wall, or you've tried it at least a handful of times. We're not focused on getting into that straight line handstand right now, because there are a lot of different steps that need to click into place before you can get there. We need to have strong wrists, and then going up the body, we have to have strong, stable shoulders, strong, stable core, and control of our hips. When you can do your one-legged jump to the wall and you're not hitting it every time, and sometimes you are finding that catch, like your body catches you, then you can start to incorporate these next steps or these next entrances into handstand, which are the tuck jumps, where both legs jump up together at the same time, and the half pike jump, which is the same thing, except when you catch yourself, you straighten your legs. So let me show you what I mean first, just to review. So you've already practiced your jumping to the wall. When you can do this entrance and catch yourself, just for like a second of air, then you can start to bring in different ways of getting into this and find that catch in different places in different ways. The tuck jump is exactly like the one-legged jump, except you jump with both legs. You think about the same things. You're still trying to find that catch point in the middle. So this is what some tuck jumps might look like. You get your legs as close as you can comfortably, and you can bend your legs so you create some potential energy, so a spring here. And you're gripping the floor mindfully, like we've talked about. And you're trying to lean some weight into your arms first. And then you breathe in to prepare. And you breathe out and jump. Yep. And as you jump, you're sending your butt, your hips towards your head, towards the wall. And you're keeping your heels towards your bum. So I'm undershooting. There, I caught it for a second, and you might come down. Sometimes you're gonna overshoot, whoop, and you can use your feet to catch yourself and just jump right back down. And please shake out your wrists and stretch your wrists once you start to feel fatigued or like they are getting tired. When you are practicing your tuck jumps and the one-legged jump too, I want you to keep your gaze forward towards your fingertips or towards the front of the mat so that you're not looking back towards your feet. Keep your eye line looking forward. If you can find some air, or when you start to find the catch and you're floating in your tuck jump, you can start to play with straightening your legs out. This is called a half pike position. For some people it's easier, for some people it's more difficult. Your legs can help act as a counterweight to your jump, basically. So I actually find the half pike easier than the tuck jumps because my legs offer that counterbalance. You can start to play with that in a yoga class if you take yoga classes, or just at home, to float from something like downward facing dog to the front of your mat. This is just a fun extra thing to practice that will all translate into a better handstand, and it will help your brain and your body understand even more the importance of counterbalancing your momentum with an opposite force, which is going to be pressing into your arms. So your half pike position, you jump into it exactly like you do your tuck jumps, like that, and you're trying to find the catch, but you jump up with straight legs. So breathe in, breathe out, like that. And then you also might undershoot or overshoot there. So I caught a little bit of air there, and I was feeling the same thing. When my hips were above my head and probably back towards the wall a little bit, I felt my fingertips push into the floor to help stop me. And my legs, again, make it easier, in my opinion, because there's more weight to counterbalance me. And you do need more core in this one than you do in the tuck jump, especially if you have a really flexible lower back. Once you get into that L shape, your legs are just going to want to fling back behind you and back bend. So you are going to need some more core control and more hip flexor control, which we will do today and for day 3 as well. I will give you exercises to strengthen all of that. I want you to notice that when I hold that L shape successfully, if you drew a line from my head up to my hips, it's not going to be a straight line. My hips are actually a little bit further towards the wall than my head is. Okay, here I am. If you drew a line from my head to my hips, it's probably not straight. My butt is probably back towards the wall more, and I'm in like a back bend almost. Well, I am in a back bend, I can feel it. And then to float to the front of the mat, I want to get my feet down instead of up. So to not clunk my feet down, I have to push into my arms. So I came down really slowly, and to do that, I was pressing into the mat the whole time. I find that this pike position and then coming down to the floor like that into a forward fold instead of going up into handstand has really helped me understand that if I'm doing these jumping things, that I need to counter that. If you can do this at the wall, if you can find that catch and then start to practice coming down slow, then you could do that in a yoga class too, and you can practice all of this in that floating action from downward dog to the front of your mat. But it does take practice, and it does take a lot of control. I don't get it, as you've seen in my trials, I don't get these every single time. Even though I've done these a lot, if it's the first time I'm doing it in the day, or I've just done a bunch of different poses, my brain sometimes does need that reminder of, oh, okay, yeah, this is how hard I kick and all of that. So it's just all a practice. So the next thing we're gonna talk about is our drills. Our drills, which are intended to help you get the control and the right parts of your body to do these things a little bit better, more successfully. This is called the Uttanasana walk. So Uttanasana is your standing forward fold in yoga at the front of the mat. And you can do this with very straight legs if you're open and you have the flexibility for that. And you can do this with bent legs if your hamstrings are still opening and or you have really long legs, right? You have a shorter torso, shorter arms, really long legs. It might be easier for you to do this with bent legs. Anyway, the flexibility isn't what we're focused on quite so much right now. We're building up the strength in our shoulders and our core and just all of that awareness. In this drill, we start in Uttanasana, our version, with our hands planted on the floor like they would be for handstand or plank or the high push-up, right? You have to get your hands flat on the floor. And then we lean forward, and you are going to see that you really have to round your back a lot. Well, some people more than others. If you have a longer torso, you're gonna have to round more. But anyway, you're gonna crunch and round, and then you're gonna step your feet forward together, like kind of skid them forward a little bit, and then move your hands forward and do it again. So let me demonstrate that so that it makes more sense. So you need a runway for this. You need you don't need a yoga mat in particular, but it's helpful because you have this kind of runway and a sticky surface. You can also do this on hardwood or very thin carpet. You don't want too squishy carpet because you can collapse your wrists into that. So I'm gonna start at the back of my mat or towards it. Here we go. And I'm gonna start in my standing forward fold. And I keep my feet kind of separated, and I have a long torso, so it's easy for me to get my hands down. And I'm flexible in my legs. So this might be you. You could do it this way. I'm actually gonna put a little bit of a bend in my legs though, but you might be really bent in your legs, that's totally cool. And you might not be as close to your hands, all totally cool, still works. You get the key actions. What I'm gonna do is breathe in, and I like to kind of lean back first as I breathe in. As I breathe out, I lean forward and get the weight into my hands. I'm actually gonna come onto not my tiptoes, but the balls of my feet. Grip them out, I'm rounding, do you see that? And then I'm gonna hop my feet forward a little bit. And then that's it. You bring your hands forward, and you're gonna do another one. Breathe in, I like to lean back, but you don't have to. Breathe out, lean forward, round, lift up on your tippy toes or the balls of the feet. I'm really squeezing my core, and then hop the feet forward. If you do these slowly, you get a lot out of it, but you can go faster. I'm just trying to explain it. So breathe in, breathe out. And then you can turn around and do another round if you want a little bit more. And it depends on how long your mat is. So if I'm going faster, I can breathe in as I put my hands forward and take a step. Whew. The teaching moment is when you are leaning into your hands, your back is really rounded, and your toes are off the floor. Because you feel most of your weight in your arms and shoulders. You're pressing into the floor to counter the weight of your legs and your hips. And if you ever want to pike up someday from the floor, that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to start in this position, probably with your feet a little wider, not kind of glued together, which is very hard. And you would just lift up away from the floor someday. But even if that's not your goal, this is still going to help you. All of these actions just hold the other trials of handstand, half handstand, the pike, the one-legged jump, all of that. So the key moment, which you might want to hold for a second more, is this part of the drill where you exhale, press, lean a lot, gripping the mat up on my toes. So you might just hold this for a second. This is the harder part. And as I step my feet down, I'm not letting go of my wrists. I'm pushing them into the floor to protect my wrists. So again, I just like to lean back. It's like a mini break. Woo! And then come down, do your counter wrist stretches. I like to just flex my wrists, curl and uncurl the fingers. Sometimes I bend my elbow so it's not so intense of a stretch. And then my shakes. Shake side to side, up and down. So that is the first drill. That's your Uttanasana walk, or your forward fold walk. And you can do this maybe just once along your runway, or if you have a little bit more energy, you can turn around and walk to the front of your mat again. The second drill for today is all about our hip control And hip control is important in handstand as well once we start to get the legs straight up in the air together, because if you don't have control over your hips, then they're gonna pull you out of the pose. So we need to first learn about the movements our hips are capable of and notice our patterns, like what we tend to do with our hips, and then consciously start to control that so that we can keep our hips where we want them to be and stable in our handstand. So the exercise you can do in a plank position, which is a high push-up, but I feel like we've been on the wrists a lot and it would be nice to not be on the wrists right now. So you can do this in a forearm plank as well. I want to start more simply and have us feel these tilts in our hips. So you lie down with your legs bent and your feet flat on the floor, and you can put your hands like a lobster claw around your hips, around your hip bones. What I'd like you to do first is to breathe in and lift your lower back off of the floor, like arch your lower back. So you can see how there's space under here. There's a lot of space. As you do this, you should feel like your tailbone is being pressed into the floor and like it's actually pointing down into the floor. This is called an anterior tilt in your pelvis, and it creates this back bend in your lower back. And then go ahead and relax. And we're gonna do the opposite. You're gonna breathe out and tuck your hips, which makes your lower back flatten. So flatten your lower back onto the floor. So there's no way you could fit your hand under there. It's just completely flat. This is called a posterior tilt or a tuck in your pelvis. And as you do this and hold it, you should feel that there is some abdominal engagement to pull your hips up like this and keep them there. So the abdominals that run up and down here are engaged, and then just relax. Just come into neutral, which is just where your hips like to be on their own. And let's do that again. Breathe in and arch your lower back. You might feel your head slide down a little bit too on the floor or the mat. That's totally normal. Breathe out and tuck, round. Don't lift your butt off the floor, keep it on the ground. And then just breathe in and relax to nothing, neutral. So these tilts are the main ones we're going to be thinking about in our handstand and what we're going to be playing with in this next drill. We're going to go into forearm plank and we're going to practice tucking the hips under and then coming into neutral. So we're not going to do the back bend part right now. Ideally, I like to have everyone's bodies in neutral, so neither really tucked or really arched, but just to be real, when you're in a handstand, you're probably gonna have more control over your hips if you tuck a little bit. So that's what we're gonna practice. And you can come down with your hands flat, like shoulder width distance apart, like this. If this pinches your shoulders or it's a little bit too difficult, you can bring your hands in, clasp your hands, and you can also move your elbows a little bit further out to the side if that's easier for your shoulders. So we're gonna stretch one leg back and then the other and come into our forearm plank. And so this is already great work for your shoulders. You're pushing down into your elbows and your hands so that you don't collapse into your shoulders, right? You're pushing down and that force has to go somewhere, so it pushes your rib cage up. Okay. And we're gonna work with our hips here as well to add some more challenge. I want you to think about that tucking again. So what's gonna happen is you're not back bending, please don't do that. You're going to pull your pubic bone up towards your chin and tuck, and you should feel your abdominals engage more. And then breathe in and let that go a little bit. Come back to neutral. Breathe out, tuck. Breathe in, neutral. You can always take a break on hands and knees. I might do like 3 or 4 of these, right? I'm not talking about 100,000 of them, just a couple good ones. From forearm plank, tuck. Your back might also round a little bit, that's fine. Breathe in, neutral, press back through your heels, keeping your gaze at your hands or between your thumbs. Whew, let's do another one. Breathe out, tuck. Pull your pubic bone up and in. Breathe in, neutral. And to rest, lower your knees, untuck your toes. And you can come all the way down onto the floor, rest your head on your hands. What also might feel nice as a counter pose after this is doing your puppy, doing puppy pose again. Coming up to hands and knees, hands out wide, or you are holding your wrists and drop down. Okay, so that was the forearm plank drill, and again we're really focusing on our control of the hips and those tilts. If this is too challenging right now but you still want to practice that, you can take the shoulder challenge out of it and come into hands and knees or all fours. So this is like an easier way to do it, and you could play with your tilts first. And this is called cat and cow in yoga, which is just being on hands and knees and tilting your pelvis. So you could breathe in and arch your lower back, and you could lift your face up a little bit too. So that anterior tilt makes you back bend. So those things go together. And then you breathe out and you tuck. So on the floor, all that happened was we flattened the lower back, but here you can round your entire spine. So that posterior tuck and rounding goes together. Arch. And breathe out, tuck. And then you could practice the hip control here. So you just stay in all fours, but don't back bend. Breathe out and tuck, little tuck, and then breathe in, relax. Breathe out, tuck. Really pull in. So you see how my back just passively rounds, and then breathe in, relax. So you can just do that if you want to be a little bit easier. What might be even better is if you have yoga blocks. I didn't assume you guys would, but you can put a yoga block in between your thighs and squeeze your inner thighs as you tuck, which just gives you extra deep core support, or work, I should say. Breathe in, relax. Breathe out, tuck. Please start this sequence in a comfortable seat, and we're going to start with some neck stretches. So simply drop one ear towards one shoulder and then switch. You can lift the head up and make some wrist circles, both directions. And then interlace your hands behind your head, elbows out. And then as you breathe out, elbows come to touch in the front. And you breathe in and open your elbows and lean back, opening your chest. And then repeat. Breathe out, close your elbows. Breathe in, open across your chest. Now breathe out, do that, but also round your spine. And then breathe in, sit up tall, open your elbows. And again, breathe out, round, elbows close. Breathe in, open up, elbows wide. One more time. Breathe out, round. Breathe in, open. And now from here you can grab your towel lengthwise, hand to hand, and lift your arms over your head, keeping the towel gently taut between your hands. And you're just exploring for a stretch down your inner arms and through your chest. You may also feel this through your forearms. So you're just letting your arms gently hang back a little bit over your head. And then go ahead and take the towel down, just set it to the side, and come onto hands and knees. We'll play with some pelvic tilts, our cat and cows. So you breathe in, arch your back, tailbone lifts, and you breathe out and round. And again, breathing in, arch, breathing out, round. You can come to neutral and then lower to your forearms, and then just bring your hips all the way down to the floor. You're still on your forearms though. And we're going to play with rounding and extending through our back. So in this belly down position, you breathe out and round, drop your head. and you breathe in and lift your head, and you pull your heart through your arms somewhat. And try that 2 or 3 times, breathing out and rounding, breathing in and opening across your chest. From there, we lift right up into forearm plank. And I'm doing some knee taps there, which is just some extra core work. So one knee taps and then the other. And then we're going to play with our tucks. So in forearm plank, you breathe out and you tuck your hips a lot, and you can round your back a bit, and then breathe into neutral. Try about 3 of those. And then to rest, lower to your knees and walk your hands forward for puppy pose. So the head and the heart come down to the mat. Taking about 2 or 3 breaths, and then you can rise back up into all fours. Tuck your toes, lift your knees off the mat, and you find downward facing dog. So you're looking back at your feet, and we're going to walk our hands back towards our feet. So walk your hands back, and you're going to end up in a standing forward fold near the back of your mat or the back of your runway. From here, we're going to play with our Uttanasana walk. So find your standing forward fold that you can have with your hands planted on the floor. And then you breathe in, lean back, breathe out, round, press, and hop forward. And then again, we're just going to continue this and walk up to the very front. So remember, when you breathe out, you're leaning, you're rounding your back, and then you scoot the feet forward at the last second. Breathe in, place the hands forward, breathe out, round, and hop the feet through. Come down to seated. Any seat is fine, just to get off of our wrists. Go ahead and grab your towel again, and this time we're going to take the towel behind us, and we're going to reach back for the towel. And you have the towel hand to hand, and I want you to lift your hands up behind you towards the back of your head, and then lower them back down to the hips, and we'll do that a few times. And after about 3 times, just go ahead and toss the towel aside. You won't need it anymore. And do a couple of shoulder shrugs, just some shoulder rolls to get the tension out. So you make big circles with your shoulders. And then you can find your way up into your standing forward fold near the top of the mat, and we're going to play with our tuck jumps. So get as close as you can, bend both legs, you're gripping the mat, and when you breathe out, you hop up. It's all right if you overshoot, just kick off from the wall and come down and try again. Breathe out, jump up. Try to keep your heels towards your bum and your knees towards your chest. If you find some air time, that's awesome. You can just come down. Take a couple of trials. And then go ahead and lower down into a simple seat again for a moment. And you can do that same chest opening we did before. Just bring your elbows close together for a moment, rounding. And then breathe in and open across your chest, and your elbows move apart. And now we're going to come all the way down onto the floor. So go ahead and roll down onto your back. You can keep your legs bent. You can take your arms out in a T shape, and we're going to tip the knees over to the right into a twist. And we're just going to pause here for a few breaths. To come back to the center, draw your knees in and up, and then gently tip the knees over to the left. Take deep breaths into the abdomen. And then lift your knees up and place your feet down with some space in between them. And we're going to lift the hips up into bridge pose, which is a back bend. So you can breathe in and lift your hips up, lift your bum off the floor. Your arms are resting alongside the mat, fingers pointing towards your feet. And you just lift up as high as is comfortable. And then with a breath out, you can lower down. And then once you lower your feet down, you can walk your big toes very close together. And then we're going to open our knees away from one another into a butterfly position. You can do this a couple of times. You can bring your knees back close together as you breathe out, and then you can breathe in and open your knees apart into the butterfly or into the diamond shape. This can create a nice little arch or back bend in your lower spine. And you can lift your arms over your head, just relaxed around your head. They don't have to be straight. And that creates a little bit of a lift in your upper spine. After a few breaths, you can release by bringing your knees together, and then one at a time, bring your knees towards your chest, and you can rock a little bit. And then we'll take a brief rest. So you extend your legs out on the mat. Take your arms on the floor by your sides. And you can rest like this, just lying flat out on the floor for as long as you would like. Just a couple of breaths is fine, just to relax the entire body.